Rugby is built on values. But these 5 moments had fans outraged, divided and talking for years. From boardroom greed, to on-field controversy, to scandals that rocked entire clubs. Today, we're diving into the 5 biggest rugby controversies that had everyone talking. And trust me, number 4, some fans still haven't forgiven it. In 2022, English rugby faced a nightmare. Worcester Warriors, Wasps, and London Irish, 3 clubs with deep histories and passionate fans, went bust, one after another, in a span of just 8 months. This wasn't just a bad season, it was a catastrophe that exposed the cracks in professional rugby's foundation. First up, Worcester Warriors. Founded in 1871, this club was a cornerstone of English rugby, rooted in its community at Sixways Stadium. But by September 2022, Worcester was in chaos. The club owed over £25 million, including £6 million in unpaid taxes. Players and staff went weeks without full pay. Some got just 65% of their wages, others nothing at all. Fans watched in horror as the Rugby Football Union suspended Worcester from all competitions, citing a lack of funds and no clear plan to move forward. The final blow came when WRFC Players Limited, the company paying the squad, was wound up. Everyone, players, coaches, staff, lost their jobs overnight. The owners, Jason Whittingham and Colin Goldring, faced heavy criticism for broken promises and murky financial dealings, like using £10 million of public money from a COVID loan to replace old debts with better terms. Fans left flags and posters outside Sixways, pleading for their club's survival, but it felt like the end. Thankfully, it wasn't. After time spent in rugby limbo, Worcester Warriors are set to re-enter the English Championship for the 2025-2026 season, which in itself has divided opinion. Next, Wasps. A powerhouse with 4 Premiership titles and 2 European Cups, Wasps were rugby royalty. But in October 2022, they filed for administration, crippled by £2 million in unpaid taxes and a £35 million bond debt from their 2014 move to Coventry's CBS Arena. This wasn't just bad luck. The club had been losing money for years, even before COVID hit. The pandemic made things worse, slashing revenue while wages kept climbing. When Wasps couldn't pay their debts, the RFU suspended them from the Premiership, and 167 employees, including all players and coaches, were made redundant. Fans who remembered Wasps' glory days at Repton Avenue or their trophy-filled 2000s were gutted. England star Jack Willis, a Wasps hero, called it distressing, and 2003 World Cup winner Will Greenwood said it was enormously worrying. The RFU briefly allowed Wasps to join the championship for 2023-24, but later revoked their license when the club couldn't prove they could pay creditors or rebuild a team. Then came London Irish. In June 2023, they became the 3rd club to fall, suspended from the Premiership after failing to prove they could fund the 2023-24 season. Finishing 5th in the league, just missing the playoffs, made their collapse even more shocking. They owed over £30 million and players hadn't received full May salaries. Owner Mick Crossan admitted he could no longer cover the club's £4 million annual losses. A last-minute American-led takeover fell through and the RFU pulled the plug. Supporters like Duncan Kendall from the London Irish Supporters Club were left heartbroken, still holding awards for players like Tom Pearson, now scattered across other teams. The collapse wasn't just a financial hit, it tore apart a community, with fans struggling to fill the void of a 125-year-old club. In 2023, the Welsh Rugby Union, or WRU, faced a storm that threatened to tear it apart. A BBC Wales investigation dropped a bombshell, revealing claims of a toxic culture inside the organisation. Shocking statements from 2 former employees exposed a bullying and sexist culture that was rotten to the core. These weren't isolated incidents. Multiple staff described a workplace where discrimination thrived. Welsh rugby players were outraged, demanding action. They called it a betrayal of the sport's values WRU chair Ian Evans promised an external task force to investigate, but fans weren't satisfied. All 4 Welsh regions backed a letter demanding the resignation of CEO Steve Phillips and the entire board. Phillips admitted the culture wasn't where it needed to be, but the damage was done. An independent review later confirmed a toxic environment, and Phillips stepped down. The scandal didn't just tarnish the Welsh Rugby Union. It raised questions about whether rugby's inclusive image was just a facade. How could a sport that prides itself on unity let this happen? Fans are still waiting for real change. The WRU wasn't the only governing body in hot water. Across the border, the Rugby Football Union, or RFU, faced its own firestorm in 2022 and 2023. This time, it was about money. Specifically, the paycheck of RFU Chief Executive Bill Sweeney. While English rugby was reeling from the collapse of 3 Premiership clubs, London Irish, Wasps, and Worcester Warriors, Sweeney was awarded a hefty bonus. Reports revealed he pocketed over £1 million in pay and bonuses for the 2021-22 financial year, despite the sport's struggles. Fans were furious. How could the RFU justify such a payout when clubs were going bust and players were losing jobs? The timing couldn't have been worse. The RFU was already under fire for its handling of a controversial tackle law change, which banned tackles above the waist without consulting amateur players. That sparked a massive backlash, with some calling it the final nail in rugby's coffin. Sweeney defended himself, saying the bonus was tied to long-term goals, but critics weren't buying it. The collapse of Irish Wasps and Worcester was a sore point. Those clubs had been bailed out by a £124 million government loan during the pandemic, yet still folded. Sweeney admitted the RFU didn't have the tools to intervene, but promised reforms. For many fans, it was too little, too late. Calls for his resignation grew louder, and the scandal fueled distrust in the RFU's leadership. English rugby felt like it was crumbling, and Sweeney's bonus was the spark that lit the fuse. Let's rewind to 1995, when a Rugby World Cup final became one of the most debated matches in history. South Africa faced New Zealand in Johannesburg, a game that was more than just sport. It was a symbol of a nation's rebirth after apartheid. The Springboks, led by Francois Pienaar, were underdogs against the mighty All Blacks, powered by Jonah Lomu. But days before the final, something strange happened. Half the New Zealand squad came down with food poisoning. Players were vomiting, weak, and barely able to train. Coach Laurie Mains pointed the finger at a mysterious waitress named Susie, claiming she served contaminated food at their hotel. The All Blacks still took the field, but they weren't at full strength. South Africa won 15-12 in extra time, with Joel Stransky's drop goal sealing the victory. It was a historic moment, immortalised in the film Invictus, but in New Zealand, the loss stung, and the poisoning theory became legend. South Africans dismissed it as sour grapes. Springbok wing James Small called it nonsense. Others, like All Black legend Colin Meads, suggested it could have been bad milk, not sabotage. No evidence of foul play was ever found, but the mystery lingers. Did someone tamper with the All Blacks' food, or was it just bad luck? The debate still divides fans, and it's one of rugby's greatest unsolved mysteries. Now let's talk about a scandal that nearly derailed one of England's biggest stars. In 1999, Lawrence Dalio was at the peak of his career. The 26-year-old Wasps flanker was England's captain, a key player in the British and Irish Lions' 1997 triumph, and a role model for young fans. Then, the news of the world dropped a bombshell. In an undercover sting, reporters posing as reps for a shaving cream company got Dalio drunk and recorded him boasting about drugs and wild parties. He claimed he'd been a teenage drug dealer, sold cocaine, and took ecstasy and coke with teammates to celebrate the Lions' 1997 win in South Africa. He also bragged about a 4-day orgy with prostitutes in Amsterdam. The rugby world was stunned. Dalio admitted to experimenting with drugs as a teen, but insisted he'd lied to impress the reporters. He denied any drug use on the Lions tour and called the allegations a setup. At a tense press conference, he said he was against drugs and regretted the impact on the sport. The RFU launched an inquiry, and while drug charges were dropped due to new evidence, Dalio was fined £15,000 and ordered to pay £10,000 in legal costs for bringing the game into disrepute. He resigned as England captain and missed a tour to Australia. Remarkably, he bounced back, playing a starring role in England's 2003 World Cup win. But the scandal left a mark. Fans debated whether he'd been naive or reckless, and it raised questions about the pressures on rugby's young stars. Dalio's name still sparks arguments: hero or villain? These 5 scandals show how rugby can be as messy off the field as it is on it. They sparked fury, divided fans, and forced the sport to face hard truths. There are still dark secrets lurking in the shadows of rugby's history, secrets that could make these scandals look like mere blips on the radar. And what if the next scandal is even more shocking than anything we've seen before?